Well, here we are at the end of the decade, and we're starting to see an end in one era of hip hop, and one interesting and destructive end at that too. For the past few years, the shenanigans of rappers like Kodak, XXXTentacion, Tekashi 69, Lil Pump, and more have kept us extremely entertained on the internet. From going in and out of jail, Kodak Black, the tragedy and struggle of X's life, the low IQ dribbles of Lil Pump, and the expert level trolling that is Tekashi 69, and the amount of trolling he did to everybody. In the past few years, we've been sitting front row to one of the craziest and most colorful times of hip hop. With Kodak being sentenced to almost 4 years in jail, 2 months shy of 4 years, and him getting hit with 2 different charges that carry 30 years minimum each, and him still having other charges that he's facing, seems like it might be a complete wrap for Kodak. It may be a wrap for one era of hip hop. Most of the mainstream internet popular rappers have all been really young and really wild. Lil Yachty, Lil Pump, XXXTentacion, NBA Youngboy, Kodak Black, Lil Xan, Lil Peep, Tay-K, all were very young when they started amassing a big fan base or large amounts of attention. I believe the reasons that these rappers blew up is the same reason that their lives ended up blowing up to a million pieces. If you look at any of the rappers that I mentioned on this list, you see a few similarities. Run-ins with the law, drug use, violent, juvenile, and crazy are some of those things. It seems like a lot of the people on this list have been plagued by too many demons. These types of characteristics aren't new to hip-hop or music, but the sheer resurgence of it like this is amazing. This type of wildness is something that is attributed to rappers, which is painting the genre with a broad stroke and to artists as a whole. If you look at 27 Club, everybody on there had similar problems, and obviously it didn't end well for them either. Amy Winehouse, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Basquiat all died of drug overdoses. Jim Morrison was found dead in his bathtub, and Kurt Cobain killed himself by shooting himself with a shotgun. It was this type of wildness that made them popular in the first place. Humans have an innate wild side to themselves, a primal energy that rages and rages like a monsoon and is always eager to get out. Unfortunately for that energy, we all live in a society, and societies have rules, laws, morals, and things that hold that energy back. Since we can't exercise that energy due to fear and restrictions, we look for other ways we can release it, and one of those ways is entertainment. The entertainment is usually from people who themselves have shunned society and its rules, and live on their own terms. They live freely, and we live freely by living vicariously through their lives, by listening to their music and consuming their content, and nowadays following their lives through social media. The Instagram and Twitter world has been dominated by these guys these past few years, and this generation of rap dominated the conversation in the most wild, youthful, and obnoxious ways possible. It's these wild traits that help make their music great, not you Lil Xan and Lil Pump, and skyrocketed them to their fame. Their personal demons and tragic upbringing helped fuel their character, which in turn was put into their music. And when you add chance, luck, and some hard work, you get the result they got. NBA Youngboy pours all of his troubles and pain in his music, and you can feel it. Lil Peep struggles with drugs, depression, and love is something that he talks about in his art all the time. And X put all of that rage and anger that's been going through him all of his life into his own music, and had other songs that showcase his hooligan side, and others that showed the struggles his fans and people around him went through. Most of these artists were products of their environment, and they didn't turn out well for it. They were plagued by monsters that made their lives a living hell, and they acted out as a result and suffered, or are suffering for it. All of these causes and actions culminated into them becoming the stars they became. And the industry, being the devilish and immoral beast that it is, saw this and jumped in to take advantage of these guys. They shelled out lawyers when necessary to bring them out of jail and trouble, because the ROI would be great for them in the end. They exploited the troubles they went through and continue to do so even when things are all said and done. I mean, look at how a new X album keeps getting released, filled with unfinished ideas, also they could milk his name for as long as possible. When these things happen, there isn't going to be a happy ending, and we're now seeing this. Tekashi was only famous for a year before he was arrested, and even though he got a record deal and people say they'll listen to his music when he's released, a lot of it is still up in the air, and we don't know how things will end for him just yet. TK made a banger about doing a race after murdering somebody and lost the shit out that race and is now in jail for 54 years and still has another case pending. Kodak was in and out of jail for his whole career and is now facing multiple charges. Lil Peep and X unfortunately died. Lil Pump, who has 16 million followers, can barely sell 50k when he releases his album. The list goes on and on and on. You reap what you sow, and a lot of these guys weren't sowing the right seeds. What you do today will affect you tomorrow. Mind you, many members of the 27 Club all died around the same time frame of each other, within months to a year within each death. And most of these guys were either arrested, died, or are seeing their careers begin to take a plummet within months to a year or two of each other. I don't want to sound like some old head, but the truth is right there for us to see. I'm not judging anybody, just laying the truth there for you. These guys have been famous for less than 5 years and their careers are already reaching a screeching halt. Think about it. The generations that blew up before them are still here, even the ones who were considered wild. ASAP Mob are still doing their thing. Much of the early SoundCloud era rappers are still prospering, like Puya and Chance. Kendrick, Cole, Drake, Meek, Future, Joey Badass, Flatbush Zombies, Underachievers all go without saying. Sure, some people on that list aren't as famous as others, but they still have careers and are still eating off their music and not dead or in jail. All of these rappers blew up at the beginning of the decade or way before the decade, and they're not gone. Now, the other thing to look at, which is interesting, is that some of the older generation did have run-ins with the laws or were wild cards like the new SoundCloud generation. The only thing though is that these guys did blow up rather later in life than the new generation. Most of the people on the list didn't blow up until their early 20s to mid 20s, and most didn't reach their peak until their mid to late 20s. This allowed them to mature and grow away from the fame and attention, and this meant that when they got the fame, they acted a little bit smarter. Sure, it might have taken some time to adjust, but they eventually did. Same can't be said for the others. Kodak, X, Lil Pump, and so on weren't really given time to grow up normally. They were thrown in the spotlight when they were not only young, but when they had demons that most people will never ever face in their whole entire life. And this was not going to be a recipe for long-time success. They basically grew up under the spotlight, and we were allowed to see all their fuck-ups and screw-ups, and since many people didn't always hold them accountable, and they were rewarded for it, they reacted like kids would and continued to do the bad stuff. There's a lot we can learn from this situation. There seems to be this crazy, primal, amazing energy that feeds the minds of artists, of all artists. Many of these artists grapple with problems that are extreme, and these extreme influences changes them, makes them different people. Other times, it's also that artists have an innate skill and talent and they develop it. I believe these all have to do or stem from a wild energy. This wild energy is something that we're all attracted to. We gravitate towards it because this energy exists within us too. And by consuming the content of the artist, we too can let loose this energy. This energy is what makes these artists attractive and popular in the first place. But this is not the only side to it. Everything has good and bad, dark and light. This same energy that can help us to create, that can help us to do great things, can also be our downfall if we don't control it and harness it. This is not me saying that you should stop listening or consuming these artists' content. God knows I won't. This type of energy is necessary and beneficial. It's only when we don't control it and harness it correctly that it spirals out of control. Think of it like a car. A car has the capacity to get you from one end to another, no problem, with no injury or problems, but only if you steer it. If you let go of the wheel and just let it drive by itself, it'll crash and you'll get hurt, die, and or hurt or kill someone else in the process. These artists unfortunately weren't able to keep a hold on that energy and control it and not let it spiral out of control to the point that it ended up harming them and others. Everything in life is about balance. If you lean too much to one side, your life will either come to a stop or go off the reins. Shoot for the middle and you'll be fine in the end. Many artists have done this. A$AP Rocky, Chance the Rapper, Chief Keef all talked about drugs, were hooligans, and were pretty wild. But in the end, they controlled that wild energy, and today they're still here and prospering. The jury isn't up for every artist of this era either. Kodak can still turn things around, and I doubt he'll actually get 60 years in jail. Tekashi still has a chance when he gets out next year, and Lil Pump, well, I don't know about that. Best wishes to him though. Only time will tell. Until then, we could hold on to the lesson these rappers have unknowingly and unintentionally taught us, and hope for the best for them.